Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And today we are looking back in our own backyard yet again, where the Chicago Tribune honors the Field Museum as it looks back and turns 130 years old. And the Field Museum is something I hold close to my heart. It is the gem of Chicago, the pride and joy of the city. And for quite good reason. It is steeped in history. It ties to one of Chicago's pride and joys, the gem of the city, the 1893 Columbian Exposition, where Chicago hosted the World's Fair. And that was such a pivotal moment for the city that it still has ramifications today, one of the which is the Field Museum.
Yeah. Now, one of the fun things with the Field Museum is that almost its entire collection to this day is just the archaeological exhibits left behind by the exhibitors, shall we say, at the end of the museum. This is everything that the people who brought the stuff did not want to haul back to where it came from or to where they had to another place to store it. They just left it there, and that just became the collection.
Well, not entirely. That, admittedly, I think that's doing it not quite as much justice.
Oh,
And
oh, don't get me wrong. We're gonna get into all the stuff that people donate specifically to keep,
no,
but
but
like a lot of it.
one of the first donations to the museum was given to one of the first directors, Putnam. What was his first name? Uh, Frederick Ward Putnam, who was one of the first anthropologists and curator of the Peabody at Harvard, was tasked during the time of the exposition to try and gather enough artifacts and things to exhibit. And one of the things he recommended was a fee of $300,000, which equates to about $10 million, to acquire all these artifacts and all these items. And what he did was he hired archaeologists and anthropologists and basically scattered them into the world. And they didn't just leave the artifacts. No, they went and searched it and brought them back, which is why the Field Museum has such a wide array of collection, is because they basically took the field of anthropology, which was evolving and burgeoning, and just let them loose.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
opened the cage
Yeah.
and said, "Here's your book."
Yeah. So the collection begins, like everything that gets submitted for the collection begins with Putnam bringing on Franz Boas, the father of American anthropology,
Papa Boaz.
and George Dorsey, the first ever anthropologist to get an anthropology degree in America. And the three of them together form a panel to gather 100 other archaeologists, diplomats, historians, and other such individuals.
Soldiers, sailors, missionaries.
Yep. To go into whatever country or area that they happen to know best and find something to display for that area at the World's Fair. And they send out 100 of these people to over 50 countries.
And they were given specific set of instructions, very detailed, on how to properly excavate and scientifically record the ruins. Or if they were visiting a live tribal culture, they were told what sort of items to acquire, and the guidance was particular attention should be paid to the fact that the most important things to be collected are those of genuine native manufacture, and especially those objects connected with the olden times. Objects traded to the natives by whites are of no importance and are not desired. So they really wanted that native aspect. They wanted to show off the ethnographic interests. And my personal favorite about this is the Chicago Tribune themselves wrote a scathing editorial about this endeavor, to which they are quoted in calling it prehistoric crankery. And they stated, "If the archaeological enthusiasts think that the public has a wild, yearning desire to see skeletons from great glacial gravels or detritus from the cave floors and shell heaps, let them spend their own money," they wrote. "The directors have no money to waste on the man of the ice sheet or the stone monstrosities from Serpent Mounds," which, great reference. "All that is necessary can be supplied by the Smithsonian Institution And if Mexico, Greenland, or Peru pride themselves on this prehistoric stuff, they can easily be induced to send it.
Yeah. Now, speaking of being induced to send it,
As we
one
talk
of the
about
interesting
repatriation.
things that the 100 men that Putnam sends out come back with is a number of people return with the anthropologists, along with sometimes their entire house, uh, which they then set up in the display of the fair and just go about living in the fair, which is honestly kind of terrifying.
it
Just that you went out and you returned with some family.
it
Not
doesn't
even your family, it's just someone else's family.
it doesn't surprise me because unfortunately at this time eugenics was a very new and
Yep.
burgeoning field, and they really did believe that there were certain differences in the races that have since been disproven. I want
Yep.
to put that clear on the record that
Yep.
it has been disproven, but they wanted representative examples of all these people, and they were basically placed in cages. It's not like they were just out in the open; they were like locked
And
up.
yeah, no, yeah. They returned with 3,000 people from the 50 different countries. They came back with a small village worth of people.
A small village,
They
almost
also,
like a town.
yeah, they also brought back as much of the people's homes as they can carry, so that they could display the architectural style of the people while the people were living in it as a sort of tour. And this is where the very fun and interesting history of the Field Museum is going to get very dark, because remember the $100,000 that Putnam got to do this? Well, the investors are not impressed. They think this is a terrible show. We'll never make our money back. It's horrible. Why do we give the archaeologists anything? No one wants to see science at a World's Fair. So they hire a man named Sol Bloom, the protege of P.T. Barnum of Barnum and Bailey's Circus, to make circus acts out of the 3,000 natives that have been brought back to the World's Fair in order to sell tickets and make money.
not to
This is
mention,
where it gets dark.
not to mention just that they not only brought in the circus, but the native villages were tucked among beer halls and restaurants featuring food and music from around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
beyond the circus, they also had Buffalo Bill Cody's internationally famous Wild West show there,
Yeah.
and notorious entertainers along there. So it was just it was a huge show and a huge mix. But that wasn't quite the end for Putnam, because what he really desired was to try and take all of this work that he had done and find a place to immortalize it, a permanent institution that would memorialize the exposition and show the work that Chicago has. And they actually used France as an example of what they aspired to do.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, there is, now to do this, there are all sorts of debates on what to do and how it should be done, and it was decided that the Palace of Fine Arts during that's what it was called during the expedition. That building would become the storehouse for it, but they needed money to get it going, get it started. So a man by the name of Marshall Field donated $1 million, which is about 30 million in today's money, to see to it that all the artifacts were moved into that building and properly housed. To which he was then lampooned by the Tribune again, who complained that he didn't make enough fanfare about donating $1 million, saying he did it with as little ceremony as he would pay an admission fee to Jackson Park. Basically, they complained that we weren't making a big enough show about having this new museum that they don't want in their city.
Also a huge that's kind of a jab at Field too, because it's like, oh yeah, $1 million to this man is like nothing but a ticket to enter the park. But there was a lumberman named Edward E. Ayer who persuaded him to make the donation, and then later proposed that the museum be named after Field. You know, we call it the Field Museum because of that. And Marshall Field, if you weren't familiar, is the name of the man and also the department store that he named after himself.
Yep.
Which reached
Yep.
international
Yep.
fortunes, fame, you know, the whole likes.
All that good stuff. But one of the fun things too is old Eddie Ayer here. He manages to become the museum's first director. Probably because he convinced Marshall Field to donate $1 million. It's just like any man who can talk that much money into this endeavor should be in charge.
And it should also be noted too that George Pullman, who was another wealthy Chicagoan, also promised another $100,000 himself. And what they also did, Ayer, beyond convincing Field to make the donation, donated his own collection of Native American artifacts and helped purchase the museum's original collection of Egyptian artifacts, establishing two of the major things. But the Tribune, being the beacon of positivity that they were, gave a pretty stark criticism. They critiqued it pretty heavily, where they said, yet the common man who attended the exposition also looked to donate his items to the museum out of frugality, as it gets their names in the papers and saves the expense of packing and carting away. Basically, It was easier and cheaper for them to give their stuff to the museum than to get rid of it.
Which was true, but like way to be on board with all the exhibitions from these 50 nations going, hey, the museum's here. It has open space. Let's give it to the museum. Way to just, shine a lovely beacon of light on, generosity and preservation and just go, what a waste.
And it's very interesting, too, because the museum, shortly after opening, outgrew its original location, the Palace of the Fine Arts, which they then built a brand new building in the same style and design closer to Chicago in its current location along the lakefront. And its former building ended up becoming the Museum of Science and Industry after it was repaired.
Yep.
So, quite interesting. And
unfortunately, Justin, I do have to correct you. There is no Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. There is only the Griffin Museum now.
I will kill you.
You said he got to change the name in the other video.
I said he can pay to have it on paper, but the museum opened then and showed off the things, and they started expanding their collections a little bit. So one of the big things that makes the Field Museum unique is that most of their collections are from those original expositions. But in 1924, they managed to tie back to another Historical Humans episode that we did, where we talked about the lions of Tsavo, which are on display at the museum, which in 1898, two devil lions began attacking laborers constructing the Uganda Railway near the Kenyan city of Tsavo. And they estimated attacked and potentially killed 135 men during the 9 months that they terrorized them.
Yep.
So kind of interesting. And then they also have a gorilla who lived in the museum, or lived in Lincoln Park Zoo, who was then taxidermied.
Yep, Bushmen. Yeah, they've had was it King Tut's tomb on display? The actual tomb. This is back when they would move like the physical everything.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Which brought in 1.3 million people.
Yeah. At a rate of 1,000 people an hour. That's how many people were going into the museum to see this. Is 1,000 every hour. That is terrifying.
And then, true to my heart, and something I hold near and dear, is in 2000 they made what is probably the biggest acquisition, where they spent the most money on the biggest and most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil ever found, which is that of Sue. And if you've ever been to the Field Museum, you instantly would recognize Sue. And Sue is incredible.
Yeah, I still miss her in the main hall. I know she's got her own wing now, but I miss the main hall, Sue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Field Museum with McDonald's and Walt Disney Corporation bankrolled the purchase after a high stakes auction at Sotheby's.
Yeah. Wait, Sotheby's did something right?
Well, they hosted an auction. No, they didn't, because the Black Hills Institute, the the institute that excavated, left with nothing.
Yeah.
But it is oh.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Sue getting the Fume Museum is really weird. But yeah.
Well,
The but yeah, the museum has been around for 130 years and it's still going strong with all sorts of new actors. I believe just this year they got one of the only Archaeopteryx fossils in existence.
yeah.
Archaeopteryx, if those who don't know, is a type of, I believe, bird from the era of the dinosaurs. And its fossils, you can see its feathers, which is making it one of the rarest types of fossils out there.
Very cool, but I think that's a good point for us to wrap up on today's video. Thought we'd do something close to home yet again. We love talking about our hometown, and the Field Museum, if you ever get the chance, highly recommend. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video.